There's something that happens in a specific kind of moment, not when someone is loud, not when someone is trying, but when a man looks at you and says nothing, and somehow in that silence, you feel more seen than you felt in months of conversations. You don't know why. You don't even want to know why. You just know that something shifted inside you, quietly, the way a door opens in a room you'd forgotten existed. That feeling has a name, and most people will never tell you what it is. Welcome to Psychology of Desire, where we don't tell you what you want to hear. We tell you what you already know but haven't had the words for yet. If something in this channel feels uncomfortably familiar, consider staying. Subscribe, not because we asked, but because something in you already decided to. You've noticed it. Maybe not consciously, but you've noticed it. There are men who speak more words in 5 minutes than others speak in 5 hours. And yet somehow, the quieter man is the one you think about at 3 in the morning. The one who said less. The one who waited. The one who seemed, in some unnameable way, to already know you before you ever told him anything. This isn't about age. Not really. It's about what age sometimes teaches a man to do, or rather, what it teaches him to stop doing. Because the most powerful thing a certain kind of older man has learned is this: he has stopped performing for you. And that absence, that stunning, almost cruel absence of effort, does something to the part of you that has spent years watching men perform. You were trained, somewhere along the way, to expect the performance, the humor deployed too quickly, the compliment offered too soon, the energy that feels like it's reaching for you before you've even decided if you want to be reached. And your nervous system learned to recognize all of it as noise. Beautiful noise, sometimes, but noise. So when something arrives in silence, when something sits across from you and doesn't lean in, doesn't convince, doesn't fill every quiet moment with reassurance, your mind doesn't know what to do with it. And that uncertainty, that slight disorientation, is not weakness. It is the beginning of attention, real attention, the kind that moves beneath the surface of what you think you're feeling. There are 2 words, just 2. And when a man who understands himself says these 2 words at the right moment, in the right tone, with the weight of someone who means them, something in a woman doesn't just hear the words. Something in her remembers them, as if she'd been waiting for them without knowing she was waiting. Not because the words are magic, but because of what they reveal about the man who says them, and more disturbingly, what they reveal about the woman who responds. You're about to find out which one you are. There's a particular kind of woman who will hear what comes next and feel something tighten in her chest. Not because it's painful, but because it's precise. Because somewhere inside her, she already knows this. She's lived this. She's lain awake inside this feeling without ever having a name for it. And the moment something is named, truly named, not explained, not analyzed, but named, it stops being a ghost and starts being a mirror. So let's hold the mirror up slowly. Because the truth about desire isn't something you rush toward. It's something you approach the way you approach a fire. Carefully, aware that it gives warmth and takes it away in the same breath. The 2 words are not, "you're beautiful." Every man has said that. The words have been worn smooth by overuse, like a coin passed through too many hands, until the face on it is unrecognizable. Beauty, when named too quickly, feels like a transaction. It feels like something being offered in exchange for something else. And you, whether or not you've articulated this, have always felt the exchange happening beneath the surface of that compliment. You smiled. You thanked him. And somewhere behind your eyes, a door closed slightly. The 2 words are not, "I understand," because understanding, when announced, is rarely real. Real understanding doesn't announce itself. It simply acts as though it was always there, the way oxygen doesn't explain itself. It just allows you to breathe. The 2 words are not, "trust me," because the moment someone asks for your trust, some ancient animal part of you already begins to withhold it. No. The 2 words that a certain kind of man uses, a man who has lived long enough to stop fearing your silence, a man who has made enough mistakes to stop pretending he hasn't made them. The two words are simple, devastatingly simple. And they work not because of what they mean in the dictionary, but because of when they're said and how, and with what quality of stillness behind them. He says, I know. Not, I know what you mean. Not, I know how you feel. Just, I know. 2 syllables. A full stop. And then nothing. Just the weight of someone who has decided that you don't need to be fixed, explained, or consoled. Someone who received what you said, the real thing beneath what you said, and chose not to dissect it, chose instead to simply hold it. You have to understand what that does to a woman who has spent years being interpreted, being redirected, being handed solutions when she offered feelings, being smiled at when she wanted to be understood in the deep, structural, almost geological sense of the word. When someone says I know and means it, not as a response but as a recognition, something in you exhales that has been holding its breath for a very long time. But here is where it gets darker. Here is where it gets true in the way that makes you want to look away and keep looking at the same time. You don't respond to I know because it makes you feel good. You respond to it because it makes you feel found. And being found, truly found, not flattered, not pursued, not convinced. Being found is the thing you have wanted so quietly, for so long, that you may have stopped admitting you wanted it at all. You may have reframed it as independence. You may have told yourself you were fine with being unknown. But desire doesn't lie the way the conscious mind does. Desire keeps a different record. And the man who says, I know, and means it, has just shown you that he's been reading that record. Without your permission. Without even trying. That is not manipulation. That is something older than manipulation. That is recognition. And recognition in the economy of human desire is worth more than beauty, more than ambition, more than every grand romantic gesture that has ever been performed in the history of wanting someone. Because you can admire a performance, but you fall for recognition. And now, we have to go somewhere most people won't take you. Because what we've uncovered so far is the surface of something much deeper. And if we stop here, we've only told you half a truth. Half a truth is more dangerous than a comfortable lie. So stay with this. The reason I know works, the reason recognition works, is not simply because it feels good to be seen. It's because of what being unseen has done to you over time. And this is the part that requires a kind of courage to hear. Not the courage to be brave, the quiet courage to be honest with yourself in the dark, when no one is watching and you have no performance left to give. You have spent a significant portion of your emotional life explaining yourself, justifying your feelings, softening your edges so that the people around you could remain comfortable. You learned early, not from a lesson, but from repeated experience, that the full version of you was sometimes too much, too intense, too feeling, too aware of things that others preferred to leave unexamined. So you developed a kind of internal translator, a mechanism that took what you actually felt and rendered it into something more digestible, more palatable, more acceptable. And it worked. People stayed. Conversations continued. Relationships formed. But something else happened too. Something you may not have noticed until a specific kind of silence revealed it. The more fluently you translated yourself, the more distant you became from the original language. The more you explained, the further you moved from the raw, unedited experience of being you. And in that distance, something began to ache. Quietly, persistently. The way a body aches for water before the mind registers thirst. That ache is what a certain kind of man walks into when he says, I know. He doesn't walk into your beauty. He doesn't walk into your intelligence, your humor, your carefully constructed presentation of self. He walks into the ache, and he doesn't flinch. He doesn't try to cure it. He simply sits beside it, the way someone sits beside another person in a hospital room, not to fix what's broken, but to make sure it isn't faced alone. This is why age matters in this conversation, not as a rule, but as a tendency. Because a younger man, full of his own hunger and unexamined fear, often cannot afford to do this. He is still too busy becoming something to have the stillness required to simply be something. His presence has an agenda, even when he doesn't know it. His attention reaches for you because he needs something from the reaching. And you feel that need the way you feel a change in air pressure. Not consciously, but in your body, before your mind has caught up. An older man who has done the internal work. And this is crucial, because age alone means nothing. Age without self-awareness is just time passing. An older man who has genuinely reckoned with himself carries a different quality of presence. He has failed. He has lost things he loved. He has sat in rooms full of his own worst qualities and chosen, eventually, not to run from them. And that process, that long, unglamorous, private process of becoming honest with yourself, leaves a particular mark. Not a scar exactly. More like a density. A weight that registers as calm. And calm, to a woman who has lived inside other people's chaos, or inside her own, is not boring. Calm is not the absence of passion. Calm is what passion looks like when it has learned patience, when it has decided that what it wants is worth waiting for, worth seeing clearly, worth not destroying with urgency. You feel that calm, and your nervous system does something unexpected. It slows down, not because it's bored, but because it's recognized something it hasn't had permission to do in a long time. Rest, not sleep, not escape. Rest. The kind that happens when you are with someone and you do not have to manage the temperature of the room, when you do not have to monitor how much of yourself you're revealing, when you can simply exist at full volume and discover that the walls don't crack. That experience, that rare, almost disorienting experience of not having to translate yourself, becomes the thing you think about, not his face, not what he said, the feeling of being in the room with him. And this is the quiet architecture of what people call chemistry. It is not electricity exactly. It is recognition. It is the sensation of being in the presence of someone who has read the edition of you that you never published. And here is the darkness inside that beauty. Here is the thing that makes this not just moving, but complicated. Because you will find yourself doing something you did not plan to do. You will find yourself returning to that feeling, seeking it, reconstructing it in your mind when you are alone, measuring other interactions against it and finding them somehow insufficient. You will find yourself, at some point, no longer in control of how much space this person occupies in your thoughts, and you will not be entirely sure when that happened. You will only know that it did. This is not weakness. This is not foolishness. This is what desire looks like when it operates at the level of identity rather than preference. When it is no longer about wanting someone, but about feeling, in their presence, more like yourself than you feel anywhere else. That is the most powerful form of attraction that exists, and it has almost nothing to do with what either person looks like. It has everything to do with what they make you feel like when you are seen. So now you know, and knowing changes something. It has to. Because once you can see the architecture of a feeling, you can no longer pretend the feeling is random. You can no longer tell yourself it just happened, that you simply fell, that desire arrived without logic and without pattern. It didn't. It never does. Desire follows the deepest grooves of who you are, the grooves carved not by your preferences but by your wounds, your longings, your oldest and most persistent hungers. And this is not something to be afraid of. This is something to be curious about. Because the woman who understands why she responds the way she responds, who can sit with the full, uncomfortable, illuminated truth of her own desire without flinching and without shame, that woman is no longer available to be moved without her awareness. She can still be moved. She can still feel everything, but she feels it with her eyes open. And there is a profound difference between being swept away and choosing to swim in deep water. Both involve submersion. Only one involves sovereignty. This is what this channel has always been about. Not tactics, not the performance of attraction, not how to make someone want you or how to decode what someone wants from you, but the deeper question, the one that lives beneath all the others like a root system beneath a forest floor. The question of why. Why you want what you want. Why certain people unlock rooms inside you that others never find. Why some silences feel like abandonment and others feel like home. Why you can be surrounded by people who love you and still feel, in some essential way, unknown. These are not small questions. They are the questions that define the interior life, and most people spend entire lifetimes circling them without ever going inside. They stay at the surface because the surface is manageable. Because depth requires something that comfort cannot provide. It requires the willingness to be changed by what you find. You've stayed until now, which means something in you is willing. There is a particular kind of older man, and we must be precise here at the end because precision is a form of respect. There is a particular kind of man who has arrived at himself. Not perfectly, not completely, but genuinely. He is not performing confidence. He is not performing wisdom. He is not performing emotional availability like a skill he learned from a book. He has simply, through time and loss and the slow demolition of everything he thought he was, arrived at a version of himself that no longer needs your approval to feel real. And that self-contained quality, that interior fullness, is what you feel when you are near him. Not his accomplishments, not his certainty, his wholeness, the sense that he is not looking to you to complete something in him. He is looking at you, fully, unhurriedly, without agenda, because he finds you genuinely worth looking at. And when a woman who has spent years being looked at for something finally encounters a man who looks at her as something, as a complete, complex, sovereign human being worthy of patient and careful attention, she doesn't just feel attracted. She feels restored. As if something that had quietly dimmed inside her has been, without fanfare, without a dramatic gesture, simply turned back on. That is what I know carries inside it when it is said by the right man in the right moment. It carries the weight of a person who has done enough internal work to recognize the internal work in someone else, who sees not just the surface of what you're expressing, but the long history beneath it, the years of translation, the careful management, the distance between who you are and who you've been performing. And he doesn't comment on the distance. He doesn't try to close it for you. He simply acknowledges, with 2 words, that he can see it, and that he is not going anywhere. This is the psychology of desire at its deepest level. Not the desire for pleasure. Not even the desire for love, exactly. But the desire to be witnessed. To exist fully in the presence of another person and have that fullness received without reduction. Without editing. Without the subtle, constant negotiation of how much of yourself is acceptable right now. You have always known this about yourself. You have felt this want in the quiet moments, in the spaces between conversations, in the stillness after someone left a room, in the inexplicable sadness of being with someone and feeling alone anyway. You have known what you were looking for even when you couldn't say it. Now you can say it. And the moment you can name what you want, truly name it, not the surface version, but the deep structural version, you change your relationship to it. You stop chasing the feeling without knowing what the feeling is. You stop settling for the performance of recognition when what you need is the real thing. You stop mistaking noise for meaning and intensity for depth. You become, in the truest sense, someone who knows herself. And a woman who knows herself, who has sat in the full, unedited truth of her own desire and chosen not to look away, is the most compelling thing in any room she enters. Not because she performs anything, but because she has stopped performing. And in that stillness, in that genuine, unhurried, self-possessed quiet, she becomes exactly what she's always been looking for, something worth knowing.